Cale pondered, his breath steadying as he searched Felicity's eyes. "Time will tell, Ricky," he said, his voice steady, though the heat in his chest brewed into something undeniably disquieting. "Just remember, some masks slip hard." The tension remained suspended, a story yet unwritten, but Cale felt the light of something new budding, a fractured hope igniting amidst chaos, teetering at the edge of revelation. Scene 73. The strength of love. Jolene tightened her grip on the wooden railing of the airboat, her eyes scanning the rippling water of the swamp that glistened in the dimming light. The scent of jasmine mingled with the damp earth, an intoxicating blend that heightened her senses. Cale leaned casually against the stern, his brow furrowed, a storm brewing in those molten brown eyes. "Do you ever think about why we're here?" Cale asked, his voice low and tinged with lingering vulnerability. The question hung between them like the evening mist, thick and full of uncertainty. "What do you mean?" Jolene replied, her heart racing. Tension pulsed in the air like the thrum of cicadas in the twilight. "Us. This?" Cale gestured at the sprawling swamp around them. "It feels bigger than just business venture." Jolene's chest tightened. "You mean the past? The mistakes?" She leaned closer, trying to read the shadows on his face, her own thoughts swirling like the eddies in the water. "Yes, control. I've let my past dictate too much," Cale admitted, voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, as if the weight of the admission might drown them both. "I made a pact something I thought would give me freedom. Instead, it feels like a burden." "Cale, you can't carry that alone." Her fingers brushed lightly against his forearm, a gentle anchor. "Whatever it is, we face it together." In that moment, the haze of the swamp seemed to recede, replaced by a clarity that glimmered just out of reach. Cale turned, eyes locking onto hers, vulnerability sparking a fierce intensity between them. "Can we? Will you stand by my side even when things get messy?" Jolene felt the heat of an impending storm surge, but it wasn't only the weather that loomed ominously. "I'd be a fool to turn away from something so real," she breathed, her heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and fear. "Real, huh?" Cale's lips curled in a half smile, cutting through the tension, though something unspoken hung in the air, heavy yet hopeful. More familiar sounds of the swamp fluttered to life. A frog croaked nearby, sending ripples through the silence, and the distant laughter of Marco and Talisha drifted across the water from the makeshift campsite. They were gathering to discuss the airboat tours, a far cry from the weighty conversation unfolding between Jolene and Cale. "Tick, tick, tick," Marco had exclaimed earlier, tapping a stopwatch against his palm in over-exaggeration as he ironed out the details for the next tour. Talisha, with her soft laughter and radiant smile, leaned over him, flicking the stopwatch away. "Relax, Marco. You know we're all about adventure, not precision," she teased, winking at the group gathered around the fire pit. Yet tension still wrapped around Cale and Jolene. "What if we fail?" Cale pressed, something raw flaring in his expression. "Then we fail together," Jolene declared, harder than she intended. "At least we can figure it out, step by step. You and me against the world, right?" She grinned, more to lighten the mood than to convince herself. A flicker of mischief broke through the cloud on Cale's face. "You mean like Jolene and the Mysterious Swamp Saga?" he joked, his tone wavering between sincerity and jest. "Oh, please," she laughed, letting the brightness of their connection seep through her worry. "You definitely earned top billing as Cale, the tormented heartthrob." "Tormented, huh?" He arched an eyebrow. "I was thinking more like Swamp's heartthrob." The laughter bubbled between them, a sweet release from their earlier struggle. The weight of what lay ahead still loomed, but perhaps, just maybe, they could harness it together. Lost in the moment, Jolene suddenly froze. The air around them felt charged. With a quick motion, Cale reached for her hand, their fingers entwining with an urgency that spoke louder than words. "Whatever comes, I choose you," he declared, his voice steady, eyes sparkling with an undeniable resolve. A shiver ran through Jolene, but it was different this time. It was a promise, a determination that solidified in their clasped hands. "And I choose you," she echoed, her smile radiant against the encroaching darkness. In that world, amidst the whispers of the swamp, their connection pulsed with an unwavering strength, an unspoken bond that surged beyond the chaos surrounding them. It was love not just to endure, but to thrive amid the mire. Scene 74. Emerge from the shadows. The morning light dripped lazily over the sprawling expanse of brackish water, illuminating the endless reeds swaying like dancers caught in a gentle breeze. The air was thick with the scents of wet earth and distant magnolia, enriching the otherwise ordinary landscape of the swamp. Belial Omari stood at the edge of the dock, arms crossed tightly, his body tense, facing away from the world. His jaw clenched as he watched the ripples disturb the otherwise serene surface, a silent judgment of the chaos that lay ahead. A faint splashing approached, and Felicity Duval emerged from the mist, towing a clunky new airboat behind her, its metal gleaming like a wild beast ready to be tamed. A mischievous grin danced on her lips, the kind that could melt ice in the harshest winter. "You know, they say I'm going to sink it the moment I take off," she teased, her voice lilting with playful confidence. Belial turned slowly, eyes narrowed yet filled with unmistakable warmth. "If it sinks, you'll have to fish it out yourself," he replied, a smirk ghosting across his features despite the tumult inside. "Let's not think of failure before we even start," she countered, her golden brown skin glistening in the sunlight. "Besides, the locals love a good show. What's a little splashdown among friends?" The jab about failure struck harder than intended. Belial's smirk faded, replaced by a pained expression. "Yeah, well, some failures aren't so easy to recover from. Trust me." Felicity's teasing energy dimmed ever so slightly, recognition flashing in her dark eyes. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "What happened back there doesn't define you, Cale. You know that." He took a long, steadying breath, the weight of his dark secret hanging between them like a thick fog. Each word fought to escape, but every time he opened his mouth, fear snaked back in. Instead, he buried the chains of his past deeper, arms still crossed tighter against himself, pushing her warmth away. The air thickened with tension, and Felicity let her gaze linger on him. Her heart raced as she watched the struggle beneath his composed exterior. "Look," she said, determination dancing in her tone. "I believe in you, in what we can do together. That old pact doesn't have to rule you." Belial's expression softened slightly, a flicker of hope mingling with his self-doubt. "I made a promise. I can't just—" "Promise or no promise," she interrupted, stepping forward, brushing her fingers along the edge of the airboat as if anchoring herself. "The only thing holding you back is you, Cale." She glanced up, voice uncharacteristically serious. "You want me to believe in you, but you have to believe in yourself first." He hesitated, feeling the heat of her gaze, folding into the weight of her sincerity. Just then, a raucous laugh reverberated from across the docks, pulling them both from their moment. It was Oliver and Reggie, two locals bickering shamelessly about the best bait for fishing. The pair entertained a small crowd, absurdity stealing the spotlight. "No, no, you use live worms. Everyone knows that," Oliver insisted, flailing his hands, nearly knocking over a bucket full of soggy old tackle. "You call that fishing? You're just trying to lose every catch," Reggie shot back, lips curling into a delighted grin. Felicity chuckled, diverting her gaze. "See? We're surrounded by incompetence." Belial's lips curled into a reluctant grin, the levity breaking through his heavy thoughts. "You're right. They're the real disasters here." "Welcome to the swamp," she mused, rolling her eyes but still smiling. Their laughter blended with the swamp's quirkiness, momentarily filling the space between them with life. But still, that deeper concern lingered. Felicity turned back, her face softening, finger gentle against his arm. "Whatever you decide, remember you're not alone. We can turn this around." Her voice carried an inkling of vulnerability, infused with hope. He studied her, seeing reflected back a wildness that matched the swamp, a resolve beckoning him to emerge from the shadows, clinging to his heart. I want to. I really do." "Then let's do it." She leaned in, and for a fleeting moment her proximity ignited his senses, an electricity stoked by introspection and desire. They stood on the brink, the chaos around them blurring, the noise fading to a whisper as their eyes locked. It was a moment unmoored from time. "Together?" Felicity asked, breathless. "Together," he affirmed softly, heart finally breaking free from its chains. The world shifted, and for the first time, it felt like the wreckage of his past ignited promise rather than peril. Scene 75. Aftermath of victory. The last echoes of laughter hung in the humid air like the scent of magnolias, sweet and heavy. Jolene stood by the water's edge, her airboat glimmering under the fading sun, surrounded by the joyous debris of the festival. Plastic cups, vibrant banners, and scattered confetti that danced like fireflies in the darkness. "Do you think it'll catch on?" Cale leaned against the side of the boat. His eyes sparkled mischievously, mirroring the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy overhead. "I mean, who knew the swamp could host a vibrant carnival?" Jolene chuckled, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "You know, I was worried that nobody would show. But look at them." She gestured toward the crowd, families mingling, laughter echoing in waves, their faces lit with the flickering glow of fire pits dotted along the shore. "It feels like, I don't know, hope?" Cale's smile faltered briefly, shadows crossing his face. "Hope's a fragile thing around here, Joel. It tends to get lost like a raindrop in the swamp." But there was a warmth beneath his words, an unspoken admiration for the resilience she embodied. As a soft breeze entwined through the cypress trees, the scent of water and mud mingled with the familiar aroma of grilled catfish from the food stalls nearby. Jolene's heart surged at the sight of villagers she had grown up with, sharing stories of the past while embracing the promise of the future. "Look at Miss Annie!" she exclaimed, pointing to a sprightly older woman weaving in and out of the crowd, her laughter infectious as she recounted tales of the swamp's legends, the sun glinting off her silver hair. "She's having the time of her life." "Maybe she's recalling how she outsmarted that gator last summer," Cale replied, shaking his head with a smirk. "I should take notes if I ever run into one myself." Just then, Felicity strode over, her hands full of colorful taffy, eyes glimmering like jewels. "You two lovebirds forget about all of us over here?" she teased, her laughter enveloping them. "I just faced down a group of rowdy kids for this. I deserve a medal." "Felicity, if you don't share, I swear I'll have to. Bribery is a no-go. I fought valiantly." She stuck out her tongue but divided the taffy with a teasing huff. "Fine, but only because I'm feeling generous tonight." "Generous or just sugar high?" Cale quipped, stealing a piece. Jolene laughed, her heart warming, the camaraderie washing over her like a wave, a delicious distraction from the throbbing worry of what lay before them. Though victory glittered in the air, shadows clung to the edges. From nearby, Nico lifted a megaphone, his booming voice interrupting their banter. "Can I have everyone's attention? The great swamp race results are in." There was a hushed anticipation as the crowd turned, and Jolene took Cale's hand unwittingly, their fingers intertwining naturally, like woven reeds. "I almost forgot about that," she murmured. "How did we nearly let it slip by?" "Probably because you've been too busy dazzling every visitor," Cale replied, flashing a smile that made her pulse quicken. The tension in the air shifted as they listened to Nico announce the winning team. Cheers erupted, drowning out the whispers of last-minute gossip spinning in the crowd. Miss Annie's triumphant clamoring overtook the moment, and amidst the delight, Cale's eyes darted to the woods, a shadow momentarily flickering across his face. Jolene noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, but laced with concern. His gaze was fixed, focused. "Nothing. He paused, then shrugged lightly, "just checking on things." She squeezed his hand, offering a silent promise. Whatever shadows cruised the swamp, they would face them together. Suddenly, from the group gathered at the far end, laughter erupted once more. "Look out!" shouted one of the children, and just as quickly a giant foam gator was sent soaring through the air, landing smack dab in front of them. "Maybe that swampland hell is getting more playful." Cale laughed, a boyish grin breaking through his earlier seriousness. "I guess so. But should we be the ones to wrestle it?" she replied, her challenge hanging in the air as they both stifled laughter. Cale raised an eyebrow in mock seriousness. "Only if you promise to take the first bite." As their laughter mingled with the sounds of community triumph, Jolene marveled at how love could shift shadows into light, kindling a spark she never knew she needed. Life felt like it was dancing on the precipice of something great, and she was ready. Maybe tonight, just maybe, they could rewrite their destinies, tangled as they were like the roots of the cypress trees, rooted in this beautiful, chaotic swamp. "Let's make a deal," she suggested, leaning closer, eyes bright. "We're going to take on whatever comes next together." "Deal," Cale said, his voice less casual, more intense, as the embers of newfound hope flickered brightly between them. As dusk fell, wrapping the swamp in a coziness that felt both whimsical and profound, they stood side by side, ready for whatever awaited them in the sacred wilds of the Mire. Scene 76. Rebuilding connections. The sun dipped low over the murky landscape, casting a warm golden hue across the cypress trees that lined the water. The air thrummed with the hum of insects, punctuated by the occasional croak of a bullfrog. Jolene Duval stood on the wooden deck of the airboat, her gaze fixed on the swirling waters that reflected the sky's shifting colors. The faint smell of damp earth mixed with the sweet aroma of blooming jasmine enveloping her in a moment of calm she had seldom felt recently. Felicity! A voice rang out, breaking her reverie. It was Cale Omari, his charisma undeniable even as he scratched at the stubble on his chin, a subtle reminder of sleepless nights. He approached, a thin envelope clutched in his hand as he stepped carefully over the disheveled tools and scattered leaflets that littered the deck. "Did you dredge that from the depths of the swamp?" she quipped, her smile reminiscent of summers when the air was filled with laughter. "More bills? Maybe?" Cale smirked, tossing the envelope onto the cluttered table beside her. "But it looks like there's a potential grant from the city. That means less dragging our heels in the mire and more gliding along these waters," she finished, excitement sparking in her eyes. "Exactly," he said, the warmth of their shared optimism flickering like the sunlight on the water. However, just beneath the surface, an unspoken tension lurked, one that neither dared acknowledge. As if sensing the change, her friend, Marjorie, arrived just in time, hurtling onto the deck with a handful of flyers and a laugh that could pierce through the heaviness. "Found a few more partners for our community cleanup. They're convinced the swamp's just a mud pit full of gators." She leaned against the rail, grinning. "But I tell them, it's an oasis of mischief." "I hope they're ready," Jolene replied, the buoyancy of Marjorie's personality washing over her like a gentle breeze. "Can't wait for them to learn how to navigate the swamp's charms. Just remember to keep the charm coming after that last mishap." Marjorie winked at Keel. "We can't send people home with gator bites and the wrong kind of memories, right?" "Not unless they have a great story to tell," Cale retorted, his playful gaze flicking to Jolene, where their shared past hovered, unaddressed. With a deep breath, Jolene turned to Cale. "What about us, Cale? Are we still juggling all this pressure on our own?" There was something almost fragile in her tone, vulnerability peeking through her usual bravado. Cale shifted his feet, a storm brewing behind his brooding expression. "I have my past tied to this swamp, Jolene. I can't just wash it away." Jolene's heart thudded against her chest, her pulse racing not just from his admission, but the distance coiling between them, like the twists of the cypress roots submerged beneath the water. "I mean, get tangled in their roots and maybe you'll find something more than you bargained for," Marjorie interjected playfully, throwing them both a lifeline. She tossed a flyer into the air, only for it to float down like a reluctant feather, landing among the chaos. "Join our celebration." "Maybe," Cale murmured, staring at the ground, "but I'd rather not risk dragging you down with me." "Cale," Jolene stepped closer, her voice softer yet firm, "that's not how this works. We're rebuilding here together. Isn't that what we agreed on?" The air thickened with unspoken words, a tense melody playing between them, weighty yet exhilarating. Cale looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, the chaos of their surroundings fell away. In the silence, Jolene quietly took his hand, squeezing it gently, a gesture of warmth amidst the swirling uncertainty. Their chemistry was undeniable, tension crackling as they leaned into each other, the world around them fading to a distant hum. Her breath caught, and she didn't want to pull away. He searched her eyes, a silent question hanging between them, like the dusk settling over the swamp. "Jolene," he whispered, his lips just inches from hers, the gravity of the moment drawing them closer. "I." Just as their lips brushed, a loud splash erupted from the water nearby. A playful mischief pulled from the depths, sparking laughter and chaos from the direction of the community members. Their moment vanished, racing back into the realm of reality, but not without leaving a lingering warmth where their hopes intertwined. "Delayed again, huh?" she breathed, trying to laugh it off, her heart still thrumming in her chest. "Just postponed." Cale smiled, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes again, his hand lingering on hers just a moment longer. Good, she grinned, the tension easing, the promise of something deeper flaring into existence. That just means we have more chances to try again. As they resumed their planning for the cleanup, the night air filled with laughter and purpose, both knew this was just the beginning. The echo of their kiss hung lightly in the air, a tantalizing reminder of the connections waiting to be rebuilt. Scene 77, facing the future together. In the heart of the swamp, the low light of the late afternoon sun spilled through the trees, dappling the muddy ground with patches of golden warmth. Crickets chirped a soft serenade, and the rich, earthy scent of moss intertwined with damp wood lingered heavily in the air. Mire, lost in the vivid foliage, glanced at Felicity Duval, her fiery locks catching the last touch of sunlight, radiating an energy that contrasted sharply with the dullness surrounding them. Jolene, practical yet whimsical, was setting down the sketch pad where she had begun to devise new plans for the airboat business. The swamp bustled around them, oblivious to the transformative moment unfolding in their midst. She looked up, her green eyes sparkling with determination and a hint of vulnerability. You know, this place could be magical again. We just need to believe it. Cale tilted his head, the corners of his mouth curving into a mischief-laden smile. And how exactly do you plan to convince the alligators to join our marketing team? Simple, she said, her smirk matching his. We hand them brochures and ensure they're vegan. The air was thick with laughter, yet filled with an undertone of unspoken realizations, what she truly meant and all that hung in the balance. She folded her arms, stepping closer. But really, Cale, I mean it, we can turn this around. For you, Felicity, I'd scale the highest tree. His voice dropped to a whisper as he pointed toward the sprawling cypress above them. A teasing brightness flickered in her eyes. I'd like to see that. That was the moment silence swept in like a dense fog, swallowing their laughter. They stood there, breaths held, the tension in the air shifting from lightheartedness to something deeper, more meaningful. Cale's thoughts danced like fireflies, uncertain but hopeful. The gentle breeze shifted, rustling the leaves. And for the first time, the space between them felt like a canvas, waiting to be painted with the hues of their shared dreams and fears. The silence thickened, rippling with promises unspoken. She leaned forward, searching his eyes, and he could feel the weight of her gaze, heavy yet filled with longing. The scene expanded to the periphery, taking in the others that often flitted about the swamp's edges. Nearby, Marlin, Cale's childhood friend, busied himself at the pontoon, his hands clumsily fumbling with a rusted motor. "Felicia," he shouted, blithely mispronouncing her name. "How come none of the gators are giving me their best advice on this thing? Maybe they're waiting for you to offer them a better deal." Felicity called back, her laughter gliding through the tension hanging over her and Cale. Like a sponsorship? A lazy drawl floated from the deck. It was Shimone, their friend, balancing a stack of ice-cold drinks. "Sounds like a solid marketing strategy. Your swamp your way." She giggled, her eyes sparkling as she handed a drink to Marlin, who was still examining the ancient motor as if it contained the mysteries of the universe. Felicity couldn't resist a broad smile. "If only they had Instagram accounts. Do you think they'd use filters?" Cale chuckled, but his laughter quickly faded as he turned back to Felicity, intensifying the moment. "You're right about one thing, we can make changes here." The sincerity in his voice brought everything to a halt. "Yes, Cale." Her voice softened, breaking through the intensity. "But you must choose who you want to be." Without consciously thinking, Cale stepped closer, bridging the gap and lifting a hand to her cheek, softly grazing the apples of her cheeks with light, almost hesitant fingers. Her breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Rather, she leaned into his touch, encouraging him. There was a longing in his gaze that spoke of past regrets and future dreams, of burdens he could no longer carry alone. In that breath-defying moment, time hung suspended, their shared world fading into the background. And then he leaned in, capturing her lips with his, a gentle caress igniting into something fierce, raw with emotion and possibilities. They were brought together not just by love, but by a mutual understanding of the futures they'd longed for, the parts of themselves they'd fractured but now sought to mend. As Cale pulled away, breathless yet anchored, he whispered, together, always. The promise lingered, as vibrant as the colors in their new canvas, standing before the unknown future filled with hope and healing. Scene 78. The power of vulnerability. In the dim light of the swamp, the air was thick with humidity, each droplet clinging to the spindly branches of cypress trees, reminiscent of the tension brewing between Cale Omari and Felicity Duval, their unresolved arguments hanging like fog in the narrow path. The setting sun cast playful shadows, and fireflies flickered, nervous and bright, against the encroaching dusk. A distant croak of a frog punctuated the silence as Cale leaned against the warped railing of the aging airboat, his jaw clenched. "You're not just going to run off again, are you?" Felicity crossed her arms, her voice laced with a blend of frustration and concern. "I have to," Cale replied, his tone bristling. "You don't understand what I've done. I can't just stand by while—" "While what?" she interrupted, moving closer, her eyes aflame. "While you brood over your so-called curse? You don't own the right to shut me out, not when we're both in this mess together." A harsh silence surrounded them, the weight of her words hanging, sharper than the sting of dragonflies buzzing near their ears. Cale turned, his fingers tracing the rough-hewn wood beneath him, searching for answers among splinters. "If I told you everything, you'd run. I can't bear watching you leave, Felicity." There was a vulnerability in his admission, a crack in the fortress he had built around himself. Felicity softened, her fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face, revealing the determination in her eyes, a spark behind the pain. "Running away is all I've done in my life. You think I'd shy away from the truth?" She stepped even closer, the warmth between them palpable now, almost magnetic. "But I can't understand what I don't know. You're pushing me away, and every time you do—" Cale's eyes darkened, stormy like the waters surrounding them. "I'm protecting you. The swamp. It holds more than just memories. The pact I made, it's a chain that pulls me into the depths. I can't drag you down with me." "Oh, so now you're some kind of knight in damp armor?" Felicity scoffed, though warmth still flickered in her voice. "Or maybe you're just scared of what's real." The tension was electric, simmering like the swamp's surface when Joyce, Felicity's best friend, ambled onto the scene, eyeing the pair curiously. "What are we debating? The merits of damp knight versus chained rogue?" She laughed lightly, but her tone was encouraging. Felicity cast a wary glance at Joyce before returning her focus to Cale. "You don't get it, Joyce. He thinks solitude is strength when it's just the opposite." "Whoa there," Joyce chimed in, wading into their uncharted waters. "Cale, you seem to be drowning in your own doubts. Spoiler alert, we're all a little murky out here. Why not bring Felicity into it, instead of pushing her away?" Cale sighed, exasperation spilling from him like rainwater. "And then what? Share my burden? Let her learn all my secrets? I can't. Secrets are just pieces of our story, Cale. How do you see a future with Felicity if you keep walls up?" Joyce countered with a fierce cadence, her imploring gaze bouncing between them. Cale winced, the raw reality of her words piercing through his defenses. Silence enveloped them once more, curling around their hearts, thick as the evening mist. Felicity took a measured step back, her own uncertainty surfacing. "I thought I could handle it," she whispered, eyes cast down. "I thought dragging you out of the shadows would mean I didn't need to face my own." Joyce turned, her voice softer now, coaxing. "What are you afraid of, Felicity?" Felicity looked at Cale, vulnerable yet resolved. "Disappointment. Besides, how can I carry my family's legacy when I'm still figuring out who I am?" Cale stepped forward, closing the space between them, his shield cracking under the weight of admiration and fear. "Maybe we face it together then. Maybe I learn to believe in something more, even if that means risking everything." She nodded slowly, feeling the pull between them, a magnetic force stronger than secrets and fears. Their eyes met, and their laughter soft and gentle broke the dam. "Well, my past is a messy swamp, and I'm not sure what's worse, going in alone or coming out alone." Felicity's lips curved into a soft smile, the air between them charged with newfound intimacy. "There's beauty in the mire," Cale said softly, his voice a whisper against the fading light. "If you're with me, maybe we'll find it together." As laughter trailed into silence, they stood at the edge of fear and acceptance, two souls seeking the beauty in vulnerability. Scene 79, Conflicting Loyalties. The swamp hummed with life beneath the mottled greens and browns of a late afternoon sky. Sunlight speckled the murky water, casting flickers of gold that danced like fairy lights, yet the alluring beauty belied an unsettling tension. As marshy aromas swirled rich woodsy scents mixed with a hint of moss and the sharp tang of mud, Jolene Duval stood knee-deep in her floundering business plans, her brow furrowed in focused determination. The airboat sat docked but forlorn, its paint chipped and its engine rusting under neglect, a mirror to her desperation. "Cale," she called out, her voice a mix of frustration and urgency. "I need that brochure revised by the end of the day. How are people going to know we're the best airboat tour in this swamp without a fresh pitch?" She kicked at a clump of grass, sending a few wayward flies into flight. "I'm on it, Felicity," Cale Omari replied, a hint of mischief in his tone. He leaned against the side of the airboat, arms crossed, his eyes glinting with that familiar spark of charisma that often masks deeper burdens. "But if we're being honest, best tour is just a tad subjective, don't you think? What's your measure of success? The size of the alligators we catch?" He winked playfully. "Don't make light of it," she snapped back, her patience frayed but holding fast. "We need this to work. My family is counting on me." Cale, usually the charming jokester, faltered a bit, the shadow of his past creeping back in, a reminder of commitments he'd made that still bound him to the swamp's torments. He straightened up, sincerity flooding his voice as he stepped closer. "I'm here, Jolene. You know I want this to succeed just as much as you do. We're a team." Across the platform, laid-back Darius, leaning against the balustrade with a can of soda, caught the end of their exchange. His laughter was brash and loud, cutting through the humid air. "I didn't know we were in the swamp of broken dreams. Just hire a dancing alligator while you're at it. Might get us some business." He tossed the can and it landed just shy of the porch, splashing bits of swampy water. "No one's laughing, Darius," Felicity shot back, anger fluttering within her. "This isn't some joke. Can you even comprehend how much pressure I'm under?" She took a breath, flicking her long hair over her shoulder, and noticed Cale's gaze drift past her, drawn to darker shadows lurking near the edge of the water. "Hey, is that a gator over there?" Darius pointed, suddenly overtaken by mild panic. "Or is that like a swamp ghost? I swear if it's a ghost." Cale's eyes narrowed, and he stepped back toward Darius, keen on reducing the brewing conflict. "It's just a log, man." But Jolene's focus held steady on Cale, sensing a rift between them, thickening like the humid air as she took a step closer. "What's happening with you? You seem disconnected." Her voice softened, anxiousness creeping into her tone. The tension cracked, remorse surfacing under her scrutiny. Cale's expression darkened, caught between the drive to mask his burdens and the warmth he felt for her. "I'm in a swamp, Jolene. You know how it is. Hell, I have my own stakes in this." "We're both knee-deep in muck," she retorted, her voice rising. "So what do you want? A medal for being a miserable ghost? At least dress it up a little, give me something to work with here." The world around them felt too quiet for a moment, a stillness where the cypress trees held both their breath and secrets. Then came the hard laughter from Vincent, who had jumped onto the scene with a clatter. "I've seen two dogs fighting over a sock with better chemistry." "Come on, folks. Where's the passion?" "Do we get to pick a sock then?" Cale shot back, his grin surfacing, and softness firing in his blue eyes. Jolene shook her head, caught between the warmth of laughter and the chill of their deeper connection. She swung her gaze back to Cale, feeling that layer of tension shed just a bit. "Maybe it's time I show you exactly what I'm fighting for," she said, voice quiet but charged. Cale leaned closer, vulnerability breaking through his defenses as he whispered, "You bring out the best, you know that? I just worry I'll become the worst version of myself in this fight." Silence washed over them, heavy with understanding. "Then let's face it together," she murmured, their eyes locking. The ghosts in the swamp faded, leaving only the warmth of their resonating trust. "Yeah, together," he echoed, their hands almost bridging the gap, but the shadows of the past lingered, poised to rear their heads. In the distance, laughter erupted from Darius again, but Cale and Felicity had emerged from an unspoken conflict, leaving a tangled web that, if resolved, would mark a new beginning amidst the mire. Scene 80, creating new traditions. Kale leaned over a weathered wooden table, his hands working with the precision of a surgeon as he tied fresh herbs together with twine. The scent of rosemary and thyme filled the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil from the surrounding swamp. Sunlight flickered through the branches above, casting playful shadows that danced along the table. The community had gathered for what had become an impromptu celebration of the new traditions they forged amidst their turbulent lives. Nearby, Felicity was arranging the last of the lanterns, her hands fluttering like birds as she tried to keep her hair from sticking to her forehead. Honestly, I should have just brought a broom, a good gust of wind, and poof. All this hard work down the drain, she joked, tossing a playful glance at Kale. Her voice was laced with the kind of humor that only blossomed under pressure. Why do we even bother? Because if we don't, the swamp creatures will just eat what we were supposed to serve. Kale shot back with a grin, his dark eyes sparkling. Good point. I'll take my chances against the bugs, thanks. Felicity rolled her eyes, but her smile betrayed her amusement. She stole a quick glance at Kale, noting the way his brow furrowed in concentration. Underneath the jovial banter, there was an unsettling tension simmering between them, a crackling current that hovered just beneath the surface. All right, everyone, gather round, Riverside Betty hollered, her voice cutting through the gentle hum of laughter and chatter. Betty's silver hair gleamed like the swamp's reflective waters as she clapped her hands, rallying her ragtag group of neighbors. Today, we celebrate not just survival, but the stories and laughter we create together. As the circle formed, Felicity felt a flutter of unease. Memories of her failed airboat tours flickered in her mind, a haunting reminder of what she had nearly lost. She stole another glance at Kale, whose presence seemed to both ground her and make her heart race. It conflicted even more than the scrapes of laughter around them. A sudden shout broke through the atmosphere. Hey! Who brought that pie? It was Jamar, a local prankster who lived for moments like these. The question sparked riotous cheers and witty retorts, drawing laughter from Eliza, who was deftly documenting the day's comic chaos for the community newsletter. Not a chance, Jamar. That pie is for the winners of the games, Felicity called, sticking her tongue out playfully. The camaraderie wrapped around her like warm sunshine, momentarily pushing her insecurities aside. All right, let's start with something fun. Malachi, the park ranger, stepped forward, cracking his knuckles in a playful challenge. How about a swamp relay race? Come on, who's with me? Laughter erupted as a dozen voices jumped in, eager to compete. As the races kicked off, Kale found himself pulled into the excitement. He raced alongside Monty, a wiry young man known for his explosive joy. Meanwhile, Felicity, watching from the sidelines, felt the tension within her heart ease. Kale's laughter rang out like music, even when he slid and stumbled after an errant frog. But it was while they were racing back to the crowd, breathless and flushed from the challenge, that Kale realized he was closer now to Felicity than he'd ever been in this wild romance tethered to their chaotic existence. Felicity, he called out, panting as he approached her, still exhilarated. I'm winning, but only because Monty tripped on his own shoelaces. The good humor in his voice coaxed a genuine laugh from her, warming the corners of her heart. Maybe you're just lucky, Felicity replied, her eyes sparkling teasingly. Their playful exchange was suddenly interrupted by a stray alligator slinking on the periphery. Gasps erupted from the crowd, and the once laughing group fell into wary whispers. It's just passing through, Kale reassured them, stepping closer to Felicity until they were side by side. In that moment, the rest of the world faded, the previous noise replaced by the rush of their heartbeats. His hand barely brushed hers, igniting a spark. Felicity started, her voice softening as Kale turned to her. The gleam returned to his eyes. She faltered, caught in the tension, the uncharted territory of emotions swirling between them like the fog in the swamp. There was such depth in his gaze that it pulled her closer. Just what? He urged gently, taking a step closer, the air thickening. Felicity took a deep breath, a vulnerability shining through the feisty barrier she often built. Just don't let this, whatever this is, slip away. A breath passed silently between them, filled with unspoken words and a promise stitched together with lingering curiosity. Then, as she leaned in, a daring intimacy ignited in the space they shared, lips barely brushing before the warm summer breeze joined their moment. Brought to life by the laughter of friends around them, a new tradition was born amid pies and proximity, laughter and love. Scene 81. Quest for Balance. The sun hung low in the humid Louisiana sky, casting a warm golden glow over the winding paths of the swamp. Felicity Duval stood knee-deep in the murky waters of the bayou, a bouquet of wild herbs clutched tightly in her grasp. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. It was one of those delicate moments where tranquility wrestled with chaos, a juxtaposition that felt all too familiar in her life. "How's it coming along?" Cale Omari, aka Belial, loomed behind her, his voice smooth yet edged with uncertainty. He shifted his weight, glancing at the scattered piles of reeds and driftwood that littered the boat launch. Felicity turned, a playful smile flickering on her lips. "If by it you mean the swamp shambles of the last tour, I'd say we're one hurricane away from total chaos." She waved the herbs like a wand. "I'm conjuring an herbal potion for our tour guests, gonna get them enchanted so they'll forget the mess." Cale raised an eyebrow, his lips curving in a wry smile. "And here I thought you were the one who made all the enchanting." As he stepped closer, Felicity felt the charged energy between them, something like pure attraction mingled with mischief. The faint rustle of reeds punctuated the stillness, accentuating the silence that followed, a moment suspended in air, filled with unspoken truths. "I'm serious, Cale," she said, the laughter fading from her eyes. "This business means everything to me. You know that." "Yeah," he replied, folding his arms over his chest, his posture defensive yet open. "But you can't put all your eggs in one swamp." Felicity smirked, imagining her kitchen table piled high with eggs, each one precariously teetering in a mess of dreams. "So I can't be ambitious?" "You can, but ambition isn't the only ingredient." The tension crackled between them, charged with their contrasting approaches to life and love. She dropped the bouquet at her feet, bending slightly to organize her thoughts, her breath catching as she inhaled the earthiness of her world. "You don't get it, do you? I'm trying to save my family's legacy." Her hands trembled, revealing her vulnerability. "It's all I have." Before Cale could respond, a loud splash disrupted the moment, drawing both of their gazes. A knot of friends had chosen that moment to wade through the shallow waters, their laughter ricocheting off the cypress trees. Malik, with his goofy grin, was attempting to catch a wayward mob of dragonflies, while Sienna captured it all on video, yelling, "Look! Catch of the day! What's the point of fishing if you're not going to keep what you catch?" Cale scoffed, a playful jab at his friends, even as his irritation flickered beneath a light-hearted exterior. A scuffle broke out between Malik and Sienna over the phone, Sienna insisting that she'd capture his best side, while he insisted he didn't want it captured at all. The chorus of playful banter filled the air, but it served only to deepen Felicity's sense of isolation. Cale glanced back at Felicity, something unguarded in his gaze. "You see? That's what matters here. Community. We can't fix everything on our own, Felicity." He stepped closer again, his voice dropping to a whisper, now cloaked with tenderness. "Let me help you." Felicity's heart raced, caught between the abatement of flippant chaos and the magnetic pull of their connection. As he stood mere inches from her, she could feel the ambient warmth of his body, the strength radiating from him as he reached for her hand, gently entwining their fingers. "I don't know if I can," she murmured, staring down at their entwined hands. The world around them dimmed as if the swamp itself leaned closer to listen. "It's okay not to know." As he leaned in, the intensity of his breath quickened, a promise unsaid simmering on his lips. Just then, a loud crack echoed nearby, drawing their attention. The moment shattered like glass, and Felicity stiffened, pulled back by reality. Laughter drifted through the trees, and their friends were still entangled in their own dramas. Cale hesitated, his eyes locked on hers. "We'll figure it out," he pledged softly. "But first, we'll take a chance in the chaos together." The word hung in the air, electrifying and unresolved, as Felicity swallowed the knot that had formed in her throat. Together. It felt like both an invitation and a promise, but for now, it was all they had to hold on to. With a final glance at the swamp's vibrant mess, Felicity took a tentative step forward. "Then let's make a potion for the chaos." Scene 82, Humor in Darkness. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss as Jolene slapped another mosquito from her cheek. Why do they always seem to prefer us over the alligators? She mused, half chuckling at herself, while wiping her hands on her faded overalls, her hair a wild cloud of curls that caught the pale sunlight filtering through the cypress trees. Belial leaned against the side of the airboat, his brooding exterior softened by the warmth of their playful banter. "They may think you're a rare delicacy," he replied, a crooked grin teasing the corners of his mouth. "Or maybe they're just fans of chaos like Moy." "Fans, huh? You should see how many I'm losing by the second," she shot back, raising her arms as if counting the invisible attendees to some swampy concert. "You'd think they'd get the hint." Suddenly, laughter erupted from the far end of the dock, where Mel and Tony were busy setting up for the evening's airboat tours, a prime opportunity for mayhem. Mel, a tall woman with an irrepressible spirit, juggled two life vests while Tony, his arms crossed, tried to convince her they didn't come in one-size-fits-all. "Only you could make life vests look like a fashion statement, Mel." Tony chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. The laughter sliced through the tension between Felicity and Belial. Belial turned to Jolene, his voice growing serious. "You know, you really ought to make the most of these tours. It could save the airboat business." He faltered, uncertainty glimmering in his dark eyes. "And you, what's that supposed to mean?" she challenged, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. "Just that it's easier to save the boat when you're not battling mosquitoes and existential crises." A flicker of vulnerability crossed his face, momentarily unraveling the mischief that usually consumed him. Jolene felt her heart thump against her ribs. "Are you saying you care?" she asked, teasingly narrowing her eyes. "Of course not," he replied too quickly, waving his hands in mock indignation. "I'm a swamp keeper. Caring leads to problems, you know, like complex emotions." "Right," she said, arching an eyebrow, "because nothing says I'm a rugged swamp god more than dodging feelings." Across the deck, Mel flung a life vest at Tony, who caught it effortlessly. "You're still a hopeless romantic whether you admit it or not," she shouted, her laughter infecting everyone nearby. "Am not," Tony fired back, feigning shock, but it only evoked more laughter. "See, even they might agree," Belial suggested, his grin genuine now, as he watched their friends with a newfound appreciation. Just then, a raucous caw from the nearby trees startled them all, the sound of a crow landing with grace and mischief. It made a beeline for their half-eaten sandwiches left on a nearby cooler. "You see? Even nature knows how to celebrate us," Felicity joked as the crow snagged a crust, drawing more laughter. Belial leaned closer, whispering through laugh snorts, "You're working wonders on me, Miss Duval." "Uh-oh," she replied playfully, nudging him with her shoulder. "Don't make it too easy, or I might just swoon on account of those rugged emotions." Belial rolled his eyes, but couldn't help the way a soft chuckle rumbled in his chest. "Honestly, those are the least dangerous kinds of feelings. You should hear the swamp's opinions. They're thick with ghosts of wishes unfulfilled. Please tell me they don't argue like my family does," she said, raising a playful brow. "No, they lament melodramatic fates, which I think is worse," he replied, his tone mimicking an exaggerated ghostly wail. Jolene threw her head back with laughter, and for a moment, in the tangled chaos of the swamp, the shadows lifted. "Then let's avoid the fate of confused ghosts and just enjoy ourselves, eh?" "Easier said than done," Belial replied softly, his teasing demeanor fading for a moment as he caught her gaze. But before she could fully grasp the intensity of his words, Mel interrupted, bounding up to them, her face flushed with excitement. "Hey, either of you want to help me scare the tourists with an old ghost story tonight?" Jolene's smile returned, bright and mischievous. "As long as it doesn't involve us becoming part of the story." Belial, caught in the mix of their light-heartedness and the underlying tension, felt the moment hang heavy and sweet. He leaned a little closer, an unspoken connection binding him to Jolene, and replied, "No promises." Their laughter intertwined amidst the chaos of their friends, but deep down, they both sensed the shadows of their own fates lingering just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Scene 83, New Beginnings. The sun hovered lazily over the cypress trees, rays filtering through the dense foliage like streams of honey. A warm breeze rustled the water lilies, infusing the air with the earthy scent of wet soil and blooming jasmine. Felicity Duval stood on the back deck of the worn airboat, scrubbing the railing with a vigor that belied the heaviness pressing upon her chest. She wiped her brow and glanced towards the murky water, a swirl of uncertainty wrestling in her mind. "More elbow grease, Jolene," Cale Omari said from behind her, his voice teasing, yet layered with the gravity of unsaid words. He leaned against the railing, absently tossing pebbles into the swamp. Each plunk echoed a nagging doubt. "You think the tourists will pay good money to ride a rusty relic? Maybe you should have thought about that before signing the loan papers." Jolene's back stiffened. She hated the truth of that statement. "You think you can do better?" she shot back, her hands clenching on the damp rag in response to Cale's sardonic tone. "Maybe if you focused more on supporting me rather than sulking over your issues, we could actually get somewhere." A silence fell between them that felt as thick as the humid air. Cale's brow furrowed, caught between irritation and a surprising pang of hurt. "Support? You call that support? Throwing my shortcomings in my face?" Their eyes met, a flash of tension sparking like dry kindling. The air vibrated with the unspoken, drowning out the distant croak of frogs and the rustling leaves. Suddenly, the silence felt overbearing, and she shifted uncomfortably on the deck, unsure where this was headed.